Hey everyone, welcome to Tony for The Infinite Abyss. Tony for you. The ultimate goal of any religious practitioner, other than maybe living a good life, is getting into those sweet pearly gates. The infinite land of bliss and peace is the most impactful and powerful reward for those who exemplify a righteous existence. On the flip side, where there is reward, there must also be punishment. For all those who live in eternal light and peace, there are also those who land themselves in utter darkness and chaos. That being said, unlike the Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism, the Abrahamic religions don't have much on the idea of the netherworld and punishment of sinners. Aside from the odd mention of hellfire and the land of demons where Lucifer resides, throughout time there has been talk of one entity, the being known as Abaddon, or Abaddon, the bottomless pit, king of many locusts, an enigmatic angel of hunger and death. In Greek known as Apollyon, his name means destruction and doom, the end of all things. There's a surprising amount to get into, so let's learn what we can from the relevant texts and shed some light on the angel of destruction, Abaddon. The first known mention of Abaddon is written of in the Book of Job. This book is widely famous for having an angel becoming a Satan to question God's grace towards a single human named Job, a devout believer in God and wealthy farmer with a beautiful family. In heaven, God favored him for his pious and kind nature, believing him to be a shining example of a righteous man. After thinking on God speaking his thoughts to the group of angels, one of them stepped forward and began a conversation with the Lord. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Does Job fear God for nothing?" Satan replied. "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flock and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. For context, in ancient Hebrew, the word Satan was more of a title than a specific entity's name. Satan literally translates to one who opposes, and in this case, the angel that came forward to contest God's judgment was dubbed a Satan. In fact, in many cases in the Bible, any who block paths or work against those enacting their will would be named a Satan. As time went on though, Lucifer opposed not just one aspect of God, but his entire being, so he was dubbed the ultimate Satan, and no other was given the title in the future. With that knowledge, we can come to understand that angels in heaven and on earth can question God, and can even directly oppose his will without fear of intense repercussions. Though in this case, poor Job didn't walk away unscathed. Over the course of the story, the Satan absolutely decimated Job's life, from cursing him with poxes and boils to wiping away his family and land. His friends turned against him, believing he had done something to upset the Lord. The argument gets so heated, Job's companions question his very understanding of God and his belief in him. In this conversation, Abaddon is mentioned. Job speaks in his defense, saying, "How have you helped him who is without power? How have you saved the arm that has no strength? How have you counseled one who has no wisdom? And how have you declared sound advice to many? To whom have you uttered words? And whose spirit came from you? The dead tremble, those under the waters and those inhabiting them. Sheol is naked before him, and Abaddon has no covering." In this Bible verse, the word him obviously refers to God in this context, but more interestingly, the word Abaddon is often translated to simply destruction. He essentially calls out his companions for knowing nothing of the Lord if they claim to know his workings. Job exemplifies his knowledge of the Lord in this verse, as even after losing everything and receiving no sympathy or even pity from his friends, in the face of their judgment, in his faith, he has nothing but praise for God and his wisdom. Job speaks of Sheol, the closest analog to hell or an afterlife in the Jewish faith, a realm of darkness and death. Interpreting what Job means by this is that he believes in God's ability of omniscience and capability to see all in every realm of existence, both living and dead. The passage, "Abaddon has no covering," has less of an obvious meaning, however. It can be interpreted that even though Job is going through this unimaginable suffering, he still believes that God is not only allowing it, but sees it directly, and despite the pain, he believes and trusts God has allowed it with full knowledge of all things, and God knows better than Job. The power of this passage cannot be understated, as it's easy to accept God's plan when life is without real hardship. When going through metaphorical hell, when everything you valued is lost, the true test of faith can be had. This was the test Satan, in the beginning of the story, aimed to have Job fail. But it was the Satan that was proven wrong, and God's faith in humanity proven right, which is actually quite uncommon for a Bible story in the Old Testament. Abaddon being referred to in this way insinuates it being a living creature, an entity that exemplifies destruction and death. This may lead you to believe that Abaddon is just another powerful demon residing in hell, who became so powerful in his evil ways that he became known as destruction itself, but that would be far from the case. Abaddon is mentioned again shortly after in the same conversation between Job and his friends. Abaddon and Death say, "We have heard a report about it with our ears. God understands its way, and he knows its place, for he looks to the ends of the earth and sees under the whole heavens, to establish a weight for the winds and apportion the waters by measure." In this passage, from the manner of Job's speech, we can understand the words Abaddon and Death are living representations of universal truths, Abaddon being destruction and darkness, and death being, quite self-explanatorily, the ending of life. It was quite common in the Bible to personify worldly things as spiritual beings like demons and angels. A good example of this is Mammon being a demon that exemplifies greed, with the name literally translating to simply money or currency. While Mammon is a purely human invention, being valuable items for trade, wealth, and status, Abaddon is more of a concept of existence, with humanity's views shaping its perception. In some ways, destruction is a pure force that exists and has existed since the beginning of time, a counterpart to creation. In other views, destruction is an overwhelming force that ends that which is valued and loved by many in terms of individual lives or even entire civilizations. The last mention of Abaddon in the book of Job comes shortly after still the previous mention, when Job is left alone and beseeches God for a sign as to what it is exactly he did to deserve such a fate. When all is lost and he receives nothing but scorn from those he once trusted, what else is left than to at least find out what it is exactly you did to deserve it? If my heart has been enticed by a woman, or if I have lurked at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let others bow down over her. For that would be wickedness. Yes, it would be iniquity deserving of judgment. For that would be a fire that consumes to Abaddon, and would root out all of my increase. Here, Job lists potential crimes that would be worthy of judgment, reaching at any sin he could have at least been believed to have been committing, explaining that if he had committed adultery, wrath, or iniquity in any way, he would surely burn in a pit of fire stretching out to the realm of destruction. A hellfire fit to destroy the very soul was in store for the sinner God must have believed Job to be. But in truth, Job has done nothing wrong. In fact, he was doing everything right. The book goes on to have God come down to speak with Job directly, further explaining that which Job already deeply understands. The will of God cannot ever and will not ever be understood by any other than God. Neither the angels, demons, nor humans will truly understand the breadth of his knowledge and understanding over the course of life itself. There exists creatures beyond mortal comprehension, land beasts such as the behemoth, and sea beasts such as the leviathan, that exist seemingly as beings of pure destruction, yet as they are neither inherently good nor bad. Simply existing brings about countless repercussions over spans of time unfathomable to mortals, yet God knows all. Destruction and death are not more inherently evil than creation and life are good. From this, we can understand that the personification of destruction, being Abaddon, is not an entity who lives to bring about suffering and enact hatred onto mortals, but as a force of nature, as necessary to the cycle of all things as life or death itself. Abaddon is mentioned 2 more times in the Old Testament, in Psalm 88, a passage whose contents speak of a sick man reaching out to God, saying, "My eye wastes away because of affliction. Lord, I have called daily upon you. I have stretched out my hands to you. Will you work wonders for the dead? Shall the dead arise and praise you? Shall your loving kindness be declared in the grave, or your faithfulness in the place of Abaddon? Shall your wonders be known in the dark, and your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness?" The passage can be interpreted as a sick man hoping that despite all the suffering in life, he hopes to be shown mercy in death, though there is also the implication that he may see further punishment still in the realm of Abaddon and Sheol for sin beyond that of a mortal lifetime. The last mentions of Abaddon is in Proverbs, where it states, "Hell and Abaddon are before the Lord, so how much more the hearts of the sons of men. A scoffer does not love one who corrects him, nor will he go to the wise. A merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. The heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on foolishness. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he who is of merry heart has a continual feast." Once again, this passage iterates that God sees all, whether in the plane of the living or the dead. And while if you have doubt afflicting your heart, your every day shall be marred with a broken spirit, those who feed on wisdom and love shall be forever sated. All things are within God's vision, including hell and destruction itself. There is no need to fear these forces of nature. Simply be merry and feed on wisdom. The absolute final and most interesting mention of Abaddon in the Old Testament is also a little bit further in Proverbs, saying, "Hell and Abaddon are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. The refining pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, and a man is valued by what others say of him. Though you grind a fool in a mortar and pestle along with crushed grain, yet his foolishness will not depart from him. Be diligent to know the state of your flocks, and attend to your herbs, for riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. When the hay is removed and the tender grass shows itself, and the herbs of the mountain are gathered in, the lambs will provide your clothing, and the goats the price of a field. You shall have enough goat's milk for your food, for the food of your household and the nourishment of your maidservants." This passage, as I interpret it, is that just as the primordial forces of destruction and death are never satisfied, in much the same vein, the greed and lust of human eyes are never satisfied. When one strives for more, the next goal is ever growing, and the foolish aim for ever more and more. They become like a living embodiment of destruction, and care not for the sake of others and the world around them. Those who have faith and humility, the meek that provide for themselves and those they love, shall be rewarded with enough. Enough to live comfortably, and enough for their time on earth and their time in the next life as well. This is an incredibly powerful passage, as by comparing humanity's proclivity to sin to the universal constant of destruction itself, it puts into perspective the faith God has in us to go against this nature. Those who do not strive for that which is unnecessary are going against their very nature, but this, in fact, is what we ought to do to live a righteous and truly good life in the eyes of the Lord. If we do, we will be rewarded with enough to live and be satisfied for all eternity. The next mention of the entity known as Abaddon is all the way in the end of the New Testament, within the pages of the Book of Revelation. This book describes in detail the visions of the end times. The full breadth of Abaddon cannot be understood here without knowledge of the full passage, so that's what I'll read out to you right now. In Revelations 9, it states, "Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green thing, or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days men will seek death, and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them. The shape of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men 5 months, and they had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon. With the full weight of this passage laid bare, now we can truly begin to understand the role of Abaddon, who is alternatively known as Apollyon in Greek. As mentioned before, this book speaks of the end of days, a time where angels and demons clash, God destroys huge swaths of humanity, and Jesus will walk the earth again. There are 7 seals opened on Judgment Day that enact myriad plagues on the earth, such as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse to spread war and famine, and the whore of Babylon's temptation of kings. And most relevantly, a holy angel calls upon the strength of the bottomless pit, the realm of Abaddon, to enact the will of God through his namesake, tormenting those not worthy of God's seal. Uniquely, Abaddon is not called upon to destroy the greenery of the land or even kill humans, merely to torment them. Torment them so horrendously that they will seek death as a release, yet they will not find it. Much like the Old Testament accounts, he is described as being a bottomless pit, a realm of existence as well as a living entity that is neither good nor evil, merely a tool utilized by God in his judgment. This is the passage that gives many the idea that Abaddon is an angel of some sort, but that wouldn't be entirely correct. From the passages we spoke about before, in no way can we interpret Abaddon as an evil entity, but in the same way, neither can we see him as a righteous one either. The classification of universal constants is beyond the purview of humanity. While we strive to understand the will of the divine and the will of the world, some things simply exist for reasons we cannot understand fully. Abaddon is one of those things. Unlike life and death, where we can conceptually understand the importance of the cycle of existence, creation and destruction are similar yet unknowable concepts. Abaddon is destruction made manifest, a realm of existence and a force of nature, all-encompassing yet alien to our understanding, and ultimately one of the most fascinating entities spoken of in the Bible. In Shin Megami Tensei, Abaddon is portrayed in quite an interesting way. How would you portray a bottomless pit as a living creature? Well, the most obvious way is a giant mouth, of course. Abaddon here is a giant green slime ball with a mouth surely several meters tall. Constantly wide open and ready to consume, he is almost always an extremely high-level demon of the tyrant race and chaos alignment. Despite being a tool utilized by God, the chaos alignment is most likely used more to represent his unknowable nature to humanity as a whole. In Shin Megami Tensei 3, he is portrayed slightly differently. Here, in a similar vein to his older design as a massive head with a gaping jaw, but instead of the slime ball texture, he is more humanoid, with wings affixed to the top of his head and scaly dragon wing-like ears along with a cracked body. This time, embodying his angelic origin more, he still carries on the texture of an otherworldly creature with uncannily familiar yet strange aspects, like the overall human-like head juxtaposed with the strange, almost jagged, rocky-like skin and strange multi-pointed ears. Overall, the SMT3 design is the one I prefer, but both are surprisingly apt for the bottomless pit we have come to know. Well, that covers the Angel of Destruction, Abaddon. Let me know your favorite verse mentioning him in the comments down below, and while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. The Book of Job is one of my favorite books in the Bible, but the passage in Proverbs 15 speaking of those who feed on wisdom being forever sated is an extremely powerful mantra to live by. Special thanks to Arctic Mirror, Kalos, Kerhos, Goose Kebab, Jem Morales, Just a Middleman, Masker2196, Matt M, Mojo Bad World, Patty123, Paul Torrio, The Digital Dutchman, and VideoGamer75 for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Thanks for watching this Universal Constant breakdown, and I'll see you in the next Tony for You. Have a good one.